Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a condition that can cause some truly intense chronic pain, but you can't see it. It's called small fiber neuropathy. And, this is the kind of disorder that can make something as simple as the touch of a bedsheet feel like a nightmare. For years, it's been just notoriously hard to pin down and even harder to treat.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to get a handle on what this thing actually feels like. Then, we'll look at how in the world doctors can diagnose an injury that's basically invisible. After that, we'll see what the current options are for managing the pain, dig into a really promising new topical treatment that could be a game changer, and then zoom out to look at the whole landscape of solutions.
So, first things first, what are patients actually going through? Well, the symptoms often show up in this very specific pattern. They tend to start in the longest nerves in your body, which means it usually begins in your feet and then your hands. That's where it gets the nickname stocking glove neuropathy, which is actually a huge clue for doctors. I mean, just try to imagine that for a second. Feeling like your feet are literally on fire or frozen solid, even though when you look at them, they're perfectly fine. These feelings aren't just, a little weird. They can be completely debilitating. And for a lot of people, it all gets worse at night, which can make getting any real sleep almost impossible.
So, what's really going on here? Well, the key thing to understand is that this condition is zeroing in on the tiniest little nerve endings in our skin. These are the guys responsible for telling your brain, hey, that's hot, or ouch, that's sharp. They also handle automatic stuff like sweating. So when these specific fibers get damaged, the signals get all scrambled, and that's what leads to all those bizarre and painful sensations.
Okay, so if the pain is so real and so intense, why on earth is it so hard to get a diagnosis? Well, the problem, for a really long time, was that the standard tools doctors were using to look for nerve damage, they just couldn't see this particular kind of injury.
And this slide just nails the core challenge perfectly. Think about it. Our nervous system has these big, heavy-duty cables, the large fibers, that control things like muscle movement. And then it has these tiny, delicate wires, the small fibers, for things like pain and temperature. Your standard nerve tests, they're fantastic at finding problems with the big cables, but they completely miss any damage to the tiny wires. And so for years, patients would get a normal test result and be left with absolutely no answers.
Because of that, the whole diagnostic journey has to be more like a detective investigation. It all starts with the number one clue, the patient's story. Doctors have to really listen for those telltale symptoms. Then they do a physical exam, and only then do they bring in the specialized tests that are actually designed to see the invisible.
And these are the high-tech tools for the job. The skin biopsy is really the gold standard. A doctor takes a tiny little punch of skin, usually from your leg, and they literally count the nerve endings under a microscope. If the count is lower than normal, bam, you've got clear physical proof. Another really clever test is the QSART. It just measures how much you sweat in a little spot. And since these small nerves control sweating, it's a brilliant indirect way to see if they're working right.
Right, so once the diagnosis is finally confirmed, the big question becomes, what can we actually do about it? And the answer gets pretty complicated, partly because the why behind it all isn't always clear.
And this right here is pretty wild. For almost half of all patients, the cause is listed as idiopathic, which is really just a fancy medical way of saying, we have no idea. Diabetes is the most common known cause for sure, but a whole laundry list of other things can set it off too. And that uncertainty makes finding one single targeted treatment incredibly difficult.
So because there's no magic bullet cure, treatment has really been about managing the pain. And the strategy often involves, it's about repurposing drugs that were actually developed for totally different things. Medications for seizures or depression, for example, have been found to help quiet down those haywire pain signals from the damaged nerves. It's kind of like a workaround, but for many people, it provides absolutely essential relief.
But what if you could do more than just quiet the noise? What if you could actually help the nerves function better in the first place? This is what brings us to the real cutting edge of the research and to a pretty promising little molecule called XIB4035. This was the big question researchers wanted to answer. Instead of a pill that goes through your whole system, they started wondering if a cream, applied right on the skin, could actually support the health of those nerve endings right there at the source of the problem.
And the results they got in animal models were pretty striking. What you're seeing here is thermal sensation in diabetic mice, which developed this kind of neuropathy. The untreated diabetic mice, they had a reduced ability to feel heat. But the mice that were treated with the XIB4035 cream, wow! Their response to heat was much, much closer to the healthy mice. It wasn't just hiding the pain. It looked like it was actually restoring function.
So how does it do it? This is just a fantastic example of science in action. The first guess was that this molecule was an agonist, that it was basically pretending to be one of the body's natural nerve growth factors. But as they looked closer, they found something way more subtle. It's actually a positive modulator. It doesn't create a new signal. It just takes the body's own nerve support signals and makes them last longer and work better. It's like turning up the volume on a signal that's already there.
Now, an approach like that, so targeted, so elegant, is incredibly exciting. But it's really just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. The search for solutions also includes a whole range of supportive and holistic therapies.
For a condition that really impacts every single aspect of a person's life, management often has to go beyond just pharmaceuticals. A lot of patients explore supplements, acupuncture, and mind-body practices like meditation or yoga to help get a better handle on their symptoms and improve their overall quality of life.
And you know, this search is taking scientists into some pretty surprising places, including our own kitchens. They're looking for natural compounds that can help shield our cells from the kind of stress that can lead to nerve damage.
Take sulforaphane, for instance. It's the stuff that gives broccoli that distinctive sharp taste. And researchers are fascinated by it because it can activate this incredibly powerful protective pathway in our cells, something called NRF2, which basically acts like a master switch for our body's own antioxidant and defense systems.
And all of this leaves us with one last big thought. From these super sophisticated molecules like XIB4035 all the way to natural compounds in our food, we're seeing this incredible shift in medicine. Instead of just replacing things or blocking signals, we're learning how to modulate, to boost our body's own amazing biological systems. And it just makes you wonder, right? What other conditions, the ones we used to think were untreatable, might have a solution just around the corner?